Before we go, we've got to go to Joe Biden for a moment. He suffered another embarrassing gaffe, this time appearing to get lost while laying a wreath at a Veterans Day service. Evelyn, this is just getting sad now, isn't it?
The 2024 Republican presidential primary field is taking shape.
The battle lines are becoming clearer, and so is the field of candidates.
Is the odds-on favorites, if you look at the polling, still Trump versus Biden?
That seems to be it, but it's just way too early to tell.
I'm more angry now, and I'm more committed now than I ever was.
Big challenge for these candidates is going to be how do they navigate Donald Trump? And how do they navigate Ron DeSantis?
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
Welcome back to a big week of the program here, fellas. What a week last week was. We're starting off hot this week. How's everybody doing?
Fantastic. Ready for this show. I mean, like, the news that has occurred in between the time that we did our pre-debate show to today.
Yeah, amazing amount of stuff. Amazing amount of stuff. I mean, look, Miami that was something.
Yeah.
We had a lot going on there.
And I think a lot of folks, you know, they kind of felt like the debate felt like, okay, it's getting down to the wire.
Yeah.
It's do or die. And we're seeing the shakeout of it in real time.
Very different to watch 5 candidates on the stage.
Yeah.
We actually haven't really had that experience in a Republican primary since maybe the very end of. Did we even have that in 2016 where it ever got to a reasonable number? It felt like it was always 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But like listening to candidates who, you know, I think all by and large at the time should have been on stage. We'll have a commentary later in the show about what we think it should look like at the next one in Alabama. But at the time, everybody had something to say and they were given the allotted time to say it. You can make some judgments there that you just can't with that wider field, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Overall, I think the debate was much more productive than the previous one, which felt like more of a food fight with a lot of crosstalk. I mean, there was a lot of fighting in this one, but it felt like because there were fewer candidates and people could expound a little bit more on their answers, that ultimately it was a better overall debate, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it wasn't the only stage in town. The Ruthless Variety program had a heck of a stage.
That's exactly right. It was so significant that there were people who wanted us shut down.
Yeah.
They wanted us shut down. But, you know, thanks to the mayor and a few handful of others, the show went on.
Well, I mean, like, look, it was not an insignificant stage production. I mean, I think the whole setup that Wolf put together, I think the thing was like 25 feet tall.
It was massive.
Yeah, it was a massive stage.
And there was not a lot of good answers when they were like, you needed something additional for this massive production. We were like, what? This little old thing?
Yeah.
This little old thing that lit up like a shit house in the fog?
Yeah.
It was hard to miss. And for those of you who attended, we really appreciate it because we had a blast with you all. And thank you for doing it. We had a time of our lives over a couple of days down there. I think we got everything kind of put together, and hopefully you enjoyed the show.
Millions of Americans earn and use credit card rewards. A few big box retailers want to take those rewards away. Rewards we use on groceries and school supplies. The cash back to save on gas and grow our small businesses. And travel miles we use to make memories. The so-called Credit Card Competition Act would eliminate credit card rewards. No more travel miles, no more cash back. When lawmakers help mega retailers line their pockets, we pay for it. Tell your lawmaker to vote no on the big box bill. Visit handsoffmyrewards.com to take action today.
Where we wanted to lead off with this next week, though, is why not just follow up on all of that with like probably the best, hardest to get interview that you can get in politics right now? And that's Nikki Haley.
Wow, what a get.
Yeah. So she's going to be on here in this show. We'll talk to her a little later on. Clearly, we're now getting to a point post-debate where she is very relevant to this discussion.
Yeah.
Very, very relevant. We'll talk about all the reasons why, a little presidential horse race. We're going to talk about the Senate map because there were some developments that happened then since our last show with the announcement from Joe Manchin, longtime Democratic senator from West Virginia, who announced his retirement and subsequent perusal of the presidential field in and of itself as an independent. We're going to talk a little bit about miraculously the city of San Francisco cleaning itself up.
Wow,
pretty amazing.
I wonder what it would take.
Pretty amazing. And then we got a whole other stuff going on, including an expensive chicken, which we'll discuss.
I saw this in the pre-production doc, and I'm very concerned.
My thought was that Smug probably did not see it in the pre-production, which is why it's still in there.
Oh, no.
So brace yourselves, everyone. Thanks for coming to the YouTube channel, too, to check out that live deal. If you're going to watch one of our live shows live, that is the absolute best way to do it. I had a lot of feedback from a lot of people who were watching it who thought, like, we finally hit game day status with this deal. They thought this thing looked about as professional as it could look, and great.
Yeah, production was great, and the guests were great. Even there was some newsy stuff in there because RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel stopped by, talked about the election results from Tuesday. She's been getting a lot of criticism online, some from Trump people, some from DeSantis people, yada, yada, yada. And she, came up there to talk about how she thought that the Republican Party has still sort of failed to properly frame the issue of abortion, which I thought was very interesting, that she kind of came into our event and was like, this is the thing we need to fix. Yeah. And we've heard it from other people, but I just thought that was sort of interesting coming directly from her.
Well, particularly in that venue, right, where we're kind of previewing a debate. They're the host of the debate. They got a lot of nuts and bolts to talk about, but she came up with an agenda that she wanted to discuss. And like I said, there's been a lot of discussion about that feedback that she provided, so we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But maybe we should just start with the winners and losers of who we thought. And I know Smug and I, we had the opportunity to do a little of this live immediately after. So let's start with the fellas that didn't. Smash, what was your takeaway from the debate in Miami?
Well, I thought Ronnie D actually did a very good job. I think of the three debates he's participated in, this was probably his best, and that's no surprise. A smaller field gives him an ability to talk more. One of the things I wish we could hear more from Ronnie D about is basically that I'm not Mr. Personality up here. I'm a competent executive who can actually govern a state and has done so successfully. And you just can't get to that side of his personality in soundbite, in little chunks and sound bites, because that's not really his thing. I thought he did a great job. I thought Nikki did a great job as usual. In these debate settings, she's very, very good. But the biggest crowd in Florida on the night of the debate was in Hialeah, just a few blocks away from where the debate was located. So Donald Trump also had a very, very big night.
So who's he saying won? All of them?
I mean,
including in Hialeah.
I'm saying all three of them had. He was asking winners and losers. He didn't say declare who won.
It's not like our winner.
Okay, got it. I'm sorry. Maybe I was confused.
I'm just saying that these
all three of those you see as like guys who won the night.
In my mind, these are some of the highlights.
No, okay, no, that's fair. That's totally fair.
And I thought you were a big winner for managing to obtain a coat at our show, which you had forgotten before you had left.
We tried so hard to get him a coat.
This is just lies.
We worked so hard to get you a coat.
Okay. For our audience, let me see if I can shorthand this entire thing. So we carpooled to the airport. I dropped my car off at my house and combined into Ashbrook's car. My blazer was, on a coat hanger in the back seat, and I forgot it. We got about a quarter.
I offered to. Okay, finish. Go ahead.
May I finish? We got about a quarter mile away, and I was like, shit, I forgot my blazer. And they were like, hey, we want to, turn around and get it. I was like, no, you know what? I can solve that problem when we get there. I don't want us to be late, for the flight and everything. And, so we're in an Uber in Miami and I make the, I think common sense decision to be like, let's just go to Men's Warehouse. You're going to like the way you look. They guarantee it.
They do guarantee it.
They guarantee it.
Yeah.
And it'll be like a 20-minute transaction.
Right.
Just like off the shelf, just give me something that fits and it'll work. Right? Well, no. That couldn't do the reasonable thing that would be very straightforward and easy. My friend John Ashbrook is like, I've got the solution. There is an Italian custom, what was it, like a tailor situation.
Yeah, men's clothing.
Angelo's. Angelo's that you had found on your Google machine
Italian
on your phone.
men's clothier
Yeah, sure.
is what it's at on
And
the Google machine.
and so
He suggested trying to get some tailor to cut a suit same day. Like
no, it's just insane.
No, so
It was a bit. But this is what they wanted. What they wanted was to set me up to go to some obscure place in this strip mall in the middle of nowhere, where a guy's gonna like some 300-pound Italian guy, with the tape measuring over his shoulders and the chalk. The chalk is gonna be like measuring my inseams and stuff. That's what they wanted. The visual. They want to be able to go on stage at the convention and tell the story about how they hooked me up with this just very awkward exchange with some tailor. Anyway,
we were figuring there would be some kind of like some kind of a spread.
Yeah.
John and I could enjoy some food and drink.
This would have been good content. We're in Miami. We could have even gotten like Roger Stone on the case.
Yeah, but
so that's
content.
what we were thinking, is that we would play this string out to see where it landed.
Yeah, all for content, all to make me angry.
And Michael was getting a little fed up as was our Uber driver. Although he was doing,
there's a lot of traffic in Miami around that time of day.
But we made it to the Italian clothier.
The wild thing is this all just comes down to poor planning. I like to have a checklist before I fly to make sure I'm there early, ready to roll. It's not a lot to ask. You're going to get on a plane, so bring with you everything you need.
Smug got there 5 minutes before takeoff.
Yeah,
I got there on time.
Anyway, so yeah, we could show up to the strip mall in the middle of nowhere, and Ashbrook's like, no, I called them. They said they're like, next to the, empanada restaurant or something. And I walk up there, and it's women's shapewear. Not even the place. It's not even a real tailor.
Angelo.
And he's like, no, I talked to Angelo. He assured me your blazer's right there, pal.
And I wanted to see it from.
And so then, and I go back to the Uber, and they're like, no, Duncan, you must have missed Angelo. He's there. And so Holmes then exits the Uber. Again, the meter's running this whole time, and they're doing all of this for a goof. But then Holmes comes up with me, and he's like, oh, no, it is shapewear.
Now, I walked in, and the first thing I saw was like 6 racks of girdles.
Yeah. So,
I don't know. There's still a girdle shop in Miami.
Long story short, it's 45 minutes later, and a lot of traffic and 20 points on my blood pressure. I got to Men's Warehouse, where I got exactly what I needed in 20 minutes. So,
Michael, there's a 42 regular. We'll see an inseam on that.
Yeah.
We'll see your inseam.
Yeah. Anyway,
I just wanted it.
You wanted it. I get it. I understand why you guys got it. Like you wanted the content. You wanted to goof on me.
Plus, if you go to an Italian tailor, you want to be like, can I go to the bathroom? You got to check if there's a gun behind the toilet. Is that like standard procedure? Is that like the
I just wanted like a 300-pound guy with the tape measure around his neck.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And like Ashbrook was a big stickler on the chalk.
Wanted the chalk.
He wanted
the blazer they put over you that has like all the stitching already in it. Like it's almost like inside out.
And Michael just has his arms out on a pedestal surrounded by mirrors.
Yeah, you would have loved that.
Like 3 or 4 people working on it.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So obviously that didn't happen.
Got changed his business model.
Now back to the actual debate.
It's not my fault.
He's like, listen, men's suits, they're not flying off the rack. How about a girdle?
So Ashbrook said that DeSantis had a strong night. Nikki did well. Trump had a big event in Hialeah. To add to that, I would say, in keeping with my winner of the week from 2 weeks ago, I won the debate.
No, because of the jacket.
No.
Okay.
No, I won the debate because at our pre-show, I took a shot of Vivek Ramaswamy, as I'm one to do.
You did. It was a real drive-by.
You are diplomatic and,
I was trying
and gracious,
to be diplomatic.
and I
erased that.
I appreciate that, but I couldn't contain myself, and I said that I thought he was smarmy.
Yes, you did.
I said he's just sort of smarmy, and I think that doesn't play well on television. I think it explains why he has such high unfaves after all of these debates.
Sure.
And afterwards, you guys were like, "Oh, smarmy," this weird word to use for him. The Daily Mail did a post-debate poll where they actually asked voters, who did you think sounded most intelligent? Who was most presidential? What did they ask? Who was the most smarmy?
Racist.
And the answer was Vivek Ramaswamy.
Which is so nutty because like the whole time he was like, he's being smarmy. And then they used the exact term.
They did.
Like, I was genuinely shocked.
Yeah. So for that, I am the winner of the debate.
I will say, though, I think it's...
We need the board back, by the way. What are we doing?
Since the debate, he's come out with his plan of how to cut government in half, which I think is an intriguing idea. You take all the government employees and the ones who are like odd Social Security.
Wait, you think
numbers,
this
you
is
just
intriguing?
Fire 'em. Yeah, it's worth a shot.
No way.
Worth a shot. Why not?
Wait, you actually rattled this around in your head and came out and spit out with like this might make sense?
Everyone knows it's a good time. They're like, oh, what are you going to do in Vegas? You're going to go throw down like $100 on black and see how it rolls. But why don't we just apply this to government? It could be fun, and it's going to save a lot of money.
You're like, bad news. Since we did absolutely zero due diligence on the skill set of the workers, we just fired every air traffic controller. But every janitor made it, so we're all set on the federal
guarantee
workforce.
it would work.
Yeah. I on Twitter, I said it was like if the Cato Institute was run by Anton Chigurh. You know.
Which is like the most brilliant line.
Sociopathic serial killer.
Just call it.
What's the name of the movie again?
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, that's it.
Excellent film.
Yeah.
Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a pretty apt.
Don't put it in your pocket. That's your lucky quarter. Call it.
That is the.
You also said his idea to build both walls on the southern and northern border reminded you of the Something But Mary scene where 7-minute abs.
Yeah, 7-minute abs. You've heard of 8-minute abs. 7-minute abs.
Like he's breaking just a world mind-bending policy.
Yeah.
No, not one. 2 walls.
Yeah.
2 walls.
It's like
stick with me.
It's ShamWow conservatism is what it is. You know?
But wait, there's more.
There's more. And if you act now, a free gift. An additional wall.
Like 3 a.m. television. Yeah. Well, I can get into that because it felt very much like that to me. Smug, what was your take?
So my winner is Vivek because number one, he made Duncan mad. Like, look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is a cause for victory. But at this point, he's outlasted former vice president, sitting U.S. senator. I mean, this is just some dude. It's a rich dude, essentially. It's a rich dude.
Well, it's a dude who's willing to spend $25 million of his own money to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got $25 million to spend on it, and anyone. Like, this isn't just like if you're a rich dude who spends $25 million, you're going to be able to overtake a former vice president and a sitting U.S. senator. And
but he didn't overtake them.
He's still there.
Yeah, I know, but
I think to your point.
And he was polling higher than them.
No.
No.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
He's polling higher.
No. We can get into that because we also are going to talk about how Tim Scott decided to drop out after this debate. I think, look, it doesn't come as a lot of news to us and a lot of news to people who listen to the program because of it, but we'll get into that.
Well, I mean, here's what you do is you get everyone who replies to a poll and you ask if their social security number ends in odd.
Then you fire them.
Then you fire them.
Yeah. No, I think that's well done. I've noticed that increasingly the winner of the week style that we're doing on this is Duncan nominating himself and then you immediately nominating whoever is the reason that he has nominated himself.
Well, I mean, my consistent thing is entertainment. I think that's the most important quality of a candidate in politics.
Right. There's the show, and then there's the meta show. The show is about politics.
Yeah.
The meta show is about making Duncan mad.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which is clearly now a 2-week run for Smug.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, look, you heard what I had to say immediately afterwards. I thought this was by far and away Ron DeSantis' best debate. I didn't even think it was close. I thought you could go 3 and then like 2 and then 1. I thought the gap between his second performance, none of them which I thought were bad or terrible, but I thought this one was extraordinary in terms of what it is that he wants to showcase and wants to do his campaign around. So my problem in rating someone like Nikki, for example, is that by now, based on the campaign trail and the 3 debates and all of her interviews and everything else, my barrier for success for her is higher than anybody else in the field. Like, she's got to clear a higher bar for me than anybody else because I already know she belongs there. Everything that it is that she's said and done, we know she knows what she's talking about. We know she's unconflicted, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with her on things like foreign policy. You know what her position is because she's clearly articulated it. She's demonstrated competence on the domestic policy side. She's a governor, done some important things, and she just doesn't miss a beat, including just dragging Vivek up one side and down the other. Right? So Like once you've done all that stuff,
I mean, like governor and ambassador is a hell of a skill set. Like that's quite the resume.
but also is willing to like rear back and just jack somebody in the face from time to time, which he clearly did with the scum line.
Yeah,
there.
Vivek.
Yeah. My only critique of Nikki at all was that she had, I thought, 2 or 3 other opportunities to just completely blindside somebody that she didn't do, and she tried to like reset her own record, which, look, that's a statesman thing to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm just thinking of this as your average political consumer and that looks at it, and they're like waiting for moments, because moments are going to happen to try to compete with the gorilla in the room here, which is Donald Trump 40 points ahead.
Well,
that's my only thing.
And Vivek took that scum line and he added a word to it and put out a shirt. It said scum bag, and he put out a shirt that said scum bag.
No.
Scum bucket.
No.
Scum bucket. And,
No.
It's even worse.
Rebel scum, like from Star Wars, is what he put out.
Oh.
And so, I agree with you, Holmes, on the DeSantis thing. You know, I think like he's not a zinger guy. He's not. He's substantive, and he likes to talk about policy and his accomplishments, his achievements as governor of Florida. So like less people on stage means he has more time to do that, and he has a lot of success doing that. What he also has is the endorsement of the sitting popular governor of Iowa.
Yeah, right.
Kim Reynolds, great friend of the program. She's fantastic. Nikki doesn't have something like at that sort of level right now. So I do wonder if in quote unquote pulling some punches or whatever, or acting more sort of above the fray, is a deliberate strategy for the Tim Scotts of the world.
Yep.
Who've dropped out of the
race.
race.
And that makes sense to me.
And he's going to turn around and endorse somebody. I don't know, but that would at least explain why her tactics were a little bit different in this debate.
No, I think there's probably a lot to
One thing that I was reminded of when you're mentioning pulling punches, where is Chris Christie? I mean, like, this entire debate series to roll up, because he had the reputation after the last time he ran of this guy shows up and somebody's going to hit the floor. They're done. He's a killer.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it out there. And, like, I really would have liked to see that.
Well, look, he clearly had a game plan that didn't unfold for him. The thing, again, it falls a little bit into this Nikki Haley category in that, Hugh Hewitt is asking extremely specific questions about defense and foreign policy. It's not an area that he's had a ton of experience as a U.S. attorney and as a governor, but he had a very specific answer that kind of also happened to be the right one, in my view, in a lot of different ways. And we all kind of brushed through that. You know what I mean? Everybody's like, yeah, he already knows what he's talking about. And so we just kind of like pat him on his head and it's like, when are you going to punch somebody in the face?
Right.
And
yeah, exactly.
But that's where I'm having trouble evaluating Chris here, is because he made 0 mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
0. But I think he's on that stage because of what you just said, and that like somebody wants to see a right cross come across the podium.
But that's it's a Coliseum. But like the people want blood. That's how it worked. Like that's what like helped build so much momentum for Trump in 2016, is because he was out there and he would stab somebody on stage and just be devastating. Yeah, but maybe everyone wanted to tune in and everyone wanted to be a part of that like excitement. And like that's essentially a debate. Like, let's be honest, man. Like, I don't want to hear like substantive, like point by point. Like, do I want to hear like Frost Nixon? Like, no, man. Like, somebody's got to fight. This is essentially a boxing match where you can't throw a punch, so you have to just own them.
It's a great point, Smug.
But if you're Chris Christie and you got in this race because you think there needs to be a different presidential nominee than Donald Trump, then you can understand a calculus in which you go into these debates and you're not trying to clear cut everybody else in the field and maybe help the one guy who's not on stage.
Yeah, I get it.
So I understand he's sort of between a rock and a hard place and all of that. Like, they did a question about Donald Trump at the front end of the debate. There are a lot of good answers there from the field. But like, what is Chris supposed to do other than his assignment? And if his assignment is disqualify Donald Trump, he can't spend all day attacking Nikki and
he doesn't want to be a one-trick pony. Right. He doesn't want to do that. And I get it, but I also hear what Smug is saying.
Yeah, it's a competition. I don't think you should think of it in a macro thing of like, am I helping Donald Trump by clear-cutting this person? It's like, anyone who's in a competition with me, I want to defeat them. It doesn't matter who they are or what they are. If they're in the same field as me, I want to beat them. That's how it should be.
Yeah. But I mean, you loved when he went after Rubio, and he didn't gain from doing so.
He did.
No,
he did.
didn't. No,
Everyone loved him for it.
but it was but it was a murder-suicide.
I mean, they were cheering in the streets, I remember.
It's like the fall of Baghdad.
Yeah, they were. Everyone was so happy he did that.
They
were tossing
dragging the statues.
Roses at his feet.
It was the best.
Yeah, his campaign was over just after that.
Well, the final competitor that we haven't touched on quickly alleviated any doubt about what our collective takeaways were when he dropped out on Sunday night on Trey Gowdy's show on Fox News. Tim Scott announcing that he was going to suspend his campaign.
I should have made that my take of like Tim Scott. I think won. It feels like he's got a lot of momentum, right? Like, things look like he might be headed up.
So look, I think after he came on this show, that this didn't surprise him. And if you listen to it, this didn't surprise you. He said on this show that it was very important to him that if he couldn't compete, he wasn't going to. Mm-hmm. And that he thought it was really important that this field provided some kind of an alternative to Donald Trump. And at that point, he was not the one that was doing that. I mean, clearly Nikki had cannibalized a huge section of his electorate that he had immediately after his announcement, that after the Milwaukee debate sort of shuffled in to Nikki's territory. She went from like a third tier to like right up to the top with Ron DeSantis, essentially tied in all the states and nationally with DeSantis. And he was just kind of like in that Vivek category.
Yeah.
And he decided, okay, like enough's enough. He didn't endorse anyone. And his campaign, look, I'm sure it's a huge disappointment to him. Mm-hmm. It didn't have the kind of traction that he had wanted for a variety of reasons, some of which we've talked about in great detail on the Variety program, but he continues to be a good guy and he continues to be an important voice in the movement. I don't think he's going anywhere from that standpoint. He still has a huge voice and major dollar donors love the guy. So I think he's going to play a role here if there is further consolidation into where these votes go. But just to give you some idea of the status of the race as he exits. The last three polls, this is just kind of over the last 3 months, according to Real Clear Politics, or last month, I'm sorry, like 3 weeks. You've got Trump at 40, mid-low 40s, with the exception of one. DeSantis, 18, 16, 17. Haley, 15, 16, right 11, there. Right there. And then in the fourth slot was Tim Scott, who had 9 points in Iowa, 7 points in Iowa, 4 points in Iowa. Below him, somewhat significantly, is Vivek at 5 points, 4 points, 5 points. You say, oh, well, maybe it's just a Iowa thing. Well, you click over in New Hampshire, it's the same story. It's basically Haley and DeSantis behind Trump, Christie now solidly in the third spot, Ramaswamy further below that, and then Tim Scott even below that. So, but basically in line, the same, almost the exact same numbers as Vivek. So you got to ask yourself, if you're looking at these debate stages, if Tim Scott just got out, who has more money, certainly more donors, and better polling, isn't this basically, in Iowa, this is basically a Haley DeSantis deal to see who's taking on Trump?
Yeah. I mean, I think Iowa it's starting to really turn into a collision course between Haley and DeSantis. And when you say, they're both sitting at about like 16, 17 each, if one drops out, endorses the other, like, I know it's not a perfect model, like voters do not instantly go from one camp to the other, but I mean, consolidation has already begun.
Yeah.
We're already seeing these numbers. The Haley seems to have surged right at the right time. Yeah. Like, best time you possibly could, because Vivek surged ahead of the first debate and started getting on people's radars, and that put like a bullseye on his back.
He doesn't get over 7 in any debate or any poll, national or in any of these significant states. She's up in the mid-teens.
Yeah, he surged too early.
And she's basically tied or just behind Ron DeSantis in all of these polls. Like, I understand Chris Christie's entire play is New Hampshire, and we'll see how that works out for him. I doubt that he's going anywhere before then, but we'll see. If he can't qualify for the next debate stage, there's obviously an important piece that needs to be considered there. But Ramaswamy, you're looking at this and you're like, well, he's actually in demonstrably worse shape than Tim Scott. Mm-hmm. Not to mention Tim Scott's overall image amongst the Republicans is great. People love Tim Scott. They didn't think he should be president this time. but they do love him. That is not the case for Ramaswamy.
Right.
Like, he's a very, very divisive figure within a Republican primary electorate.
And Ramaswamy is basically putting out controversial tweets and showing up to debates. Nikki Haley just laid down $10 million in advertising in these early states. I don't know if you guys saw this Monday morning in the early states of Iowa and New Hampshire. It's a lot of money. Ron DeSantis has this super PAC idling in the wings that can spend even more money than they've already spent over the next couple of months. So you know there's going to be a battle royale in terms of television advertising, digital advertising, and on the ground, because Ron DeSantis has a very capable field program in the state. Nikki, the same, very capable field programs. Iowa, New Hampshire. And so you're going to see the battle play out between the two of them. Trump has, we've talked about this on the show before, Trump obviously he's got a very capable ground program in those early states too, but Vivek is literally just putting out tweets and showing up to the debates.
But he's self-funding, right? So, I mean...
Okay, maybe he'll cut himself a check to write ads.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, what Tim Scott has, you know, he had a lot of money in the bank, but he knew this wasn't his time, and he's motivated for the good of the party and the good of the debate that we're having here amongst candidates with an opportunity to become the next president of the United States. I don't think that's Vivek's motivation. I think he wants to keep cutting the checks to keep the band playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that this puts him on a national stage.
Right.
Speaking for a constituency, may not have a significant foothold in a Republican primary electorate, but it keeps putting him on stage in a national way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You know, do you want to end up being the John Kasich of 2024?
That's the ultimate question that we've asked every one of these candidates, and we've thus far gotten pretty satisfactory answers. Now, when we interviewed Vivek, it was before all these candidates were in. We didn't get a chance to talk to him about this, and so you may be very well right. It doesn't matter to him about consolidation and providing voters with a very real choice here. But meanwhile, while all this is happening, like, there are two things to keep an eye on. One, this field is winnowing much quicker than it did in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is because of the RNC debate rules that were in place, with donors and poll qualifications being much more aggressive, where people still running for president don't get on that stage, and people who are significant public figures like Tim Scott or Mike Pence are certainly not going to run a campaign if they can't qualify for the debate stage. Like, they're not in it for that, right? If they're not in it to win, they're not in it at all. Maybe different from Vivek. But the second thing is, like, if you look at the way the polling trajectory nationally in all of these states are going, the more that these folks are fighting themselves, the more the Trump base is expanding to include those Republican primary voters who are along for I call them the big win coalition.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people who showed up in January and February of last year entirely in a DeSantis camp, where they were neck and neck with Donald Trump in the mid 40s, and have since migrated in a very real way away from DeSantis into that Trump category. They would be happy to find another Republican president. It's probably their preference, but they're certainly not going to vote for something doesn't have a chance to win. And the longer this goes, there's a tension between the consolidation and the consolidation on the Trump side. And I don't know where those lines cross that makes it impossible, but it can't be much further than Iowa, to be honest. Like, I can see him winning Iowa with a big margin over DeSantis and Haley in the low 20s, and everybody else sort of in an also ran category. But if you don't get some sort of further consolidation before New Hampshire, and they do it again, you're going to go into South Carolina winning 3 straight by big margins. Something radical like Democrats 2016 or 2020 would have to happen in order to get to a point where on Super Tuesday that you have a binary choice where you haven't already had a committed electorate, Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, the thing that you got to watch here.
I think that's dead on. And in an interesting way, it kind of echoes in a little bit of what was happening with the Democrats in their primary, where essentially you had the Democrats worried that Bernie is going to win this thing, right? Like, he started off with the largest share of it. Enough candidates jumped in to be able, like Elizabeth Warren essentially,
yep,
cut him off at the knees to get him just to the level that Pete Buttigieg starts winning these things, right? He wins in Iowa, he wins in New Hampshire, and then the deal is cut in South Carolina.
Where everybody
Just hands
immediately
it to Biden
consolidates. And look, Democrats have a very top-down system where it's this started with the super delegates years ago, and now they still have basically an establishment-run party that doesn't care much for the grassroots, although they implement their agenda, which is maybe that's like the hand in glove of today's Democratic Party. But Republicans don't have that luxury. And the point is like, if you're going to actually have a real race that goes into Super Tuesday, and mark my words, that's it. That's it. There is no protracted Republican primary process that gets you into April and May here.
Yeah, as much as journalists want to be like, oh, it's going to be a contested convention, this is the time it's finally going to happen. They just want to be able to write those stories and get clicks.
It's got to happen before then if it's going to happen. Now, it's happening earlier, so we'll see. And you do have a little bit more altruism within the Republican field, as evidenced by Tim Scott, Mike Pence, and some others, but it does need to come pretty quickly. The other side of this coin is obviously Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you pulled a story, Duncan, that I thought was... we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, but this coming from Democrats is really something.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of... it's fitting that we played that intro clip of Biden stumbling around at the wreath-laying ceremony. It's like that Shane Gillis bit about how when Biden gets done with an event, he's like a Roomba, where he doesn't quite know where to go, and sort of he pivots, goes back, pivots, goes back, like a Roomba, like vacuuming.
Looking for the docking station.
Yeah.
just hitting like leg chairs.
Yeah, leg chairs.
It got stuck under the dining room table.
And the molding on the wall. And he's sort of caught in the corner.
Very funny.
And Politico magazine had this story out Monday, which is sort of a look behind the curtain at what Democratic insiders sort of think about Biden's 2024 campaign. And the most telling line of it is, 2024 will be an extraordinary election, and it demands extraordinary measures. That's in part for reasons Biden refuses to accept, his capacity to do the job. The oldest president in history, when he first took the oath, Biden will not be able to govern and campaign in the manner of previous incumbents. He simply does not have the capacity to do it, and his staff doesn't trust him to even try.
What a devastating line.
That's great, right? Who wrote that? That is great, right?
It's devastating because it's so true.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about this for a long time, is that if this guy gets dug into a hole, he has no capacity to dig himself out of a hole. It's different than Barack Obama 2012, where he had a very bad approval rating, but you knew once he got on the campaign trail and was out to make his case directly to voters that this was an immensely talented human being. He could be lying through his teeth, but he was very persuasive doing it.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
Yeah, if you like your doctor. I mean, it was all bullshit, but he was good at it. This dude doesn't even know how to do the bullshit.
And we've been touching on these, themes for a while now, where we said that part of the reason why essentially the staff at the White House doesn't let Biden speak is they have no confidence in him. They're scared now. Like, this guy could say anything. He could have a horrible moment very easy, where he's like, where's Jackie? About a
Walorski,
who just died weeks earlier. He's like, where's Jackie? She here? Jackie, please stand up.
And they haven't been able to rely on Bracket Man in the way that they have been up to this point, right? The news clips are actually playing the Roomba routine.
Yeah.
They're not, it's not like, well, this is the official release out of the White House where everything he said he didn't actually say.
I mean,
and then the first half of that sentence is just a clear admission they're going to try to run the basement playbook again.
You've got Australian press pointing it out. This is international press. In case you're listening and not watching on YouTube and you thought maybe why is the cartoon Bluey talking about Joe Biden, it's actually Australian press making fun of our president.
Right. I was told when he became president that America was back on the world stage. We were going to be respected.
Yes.
Yeah. That didn't feel like respect.
Doesn't feel like respect.
That Roomba does not feel like
the laughing stock of a British prison colony in the South Pacific.
My God.
Oh my God. We're going to get letters.
For the record, we have quite a few listeners in Australia.
I love Australia.
Yeah. I mean, your venereal diseases aside. It's a terrific place.
It is.
Right? It's
the koalas.
Chlamydia, yeah. And they just spread it rampantly, evidently, which I don't. Well, we can get to that later. But this adds to that. There's a poll that was in, I think it's the Financial Times. It was only 14% of U.S. voters say Biden has made them better off. There is, I mean, you go back to every single one of the primary fissures of a presidential election, which is, Reagan said, are you better off 4 years ago than you were today? Or whatever, you know what I'm saying. You have Carville saying it's the economy stupid. Like, all of these things boil down to that being a choice. And on that choice, he's losing anybody in this room right now, including Wolf and Nikki Spaghetti, on the ballot with Biden, beats him on that question.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nikki Spaghetti could beat him almost anywhere.
86% of people, 86% of Americans are like, I cannot say I'm better off than when Biden was elected.
He'd beat him like a veal cutlet. And we laughed and we laughed. The bigotry.
Michael, show me your inseam. Michael.
Like a veal cutlet.
But I mean, look, he can't dig himself out. And if you look at the bar graphs, like look at this first graphic that they've got here. I mean, it is just so bad.
Yeah, it's even among Democrats. I mean, like, because, when 84% of people are like, I can't say I'm better off. That tells you right there. This is this next line from it. So this survey was conducted by the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business and found that almost 70% of voters thought Biden's economic policies had either hurt the U.S. economy or had no impact. That is amazing.
One of the things I noticed about this graph is that more Democrats believe that they're much worse off than Democrats who believe they're much better off.
Yep.
Think about that.
It's upside down.
Think about that. And it's conducted by the University of Michigan, so they have insight into what you're thinking before you even think it.
Yeah.
They're taking video of you answering the question.
I mean, I know I sound like a broken record here, but it is hard to reconcile this, though, as being fact, which we've seen all the polls. It is, in fact, true that everybody hates the Biden economy, with what happened on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Last week, right? Where Republicans didn't get everything that they wanted. Now, of course, there are some structural advantages that the Democrats had in Virginia. We don't draw the district maps. Republicans actually won more votes in contested races in Virginia than Democrats did. We won every
popular vote.
Yeah, we won the popular vote. We won every district that was Biden plus 8 or less.
Yeah.
But we didn't ultimately get there in taking back the state Senate or the state House in Virginia.
And part of that is a credit to the Youngkin team, in my view, because look, we've been doing this a long time, and part of what your view by the outside world of what success looks like is how you manage expectations going into it.
Right.
And they were like, no, we're going to try to win no matter what. They didn't manage those expectations. And so Democrats got their asses kicked in Virginia. They just won by one seat in both chambers, and they're like, what an outstanding victory we've had.
Right.
Also, you know
what I mean?
You know what I feel like hasn't gotten any discussion is schools weren't as hot a topic as they were when Youngkin ran.
Yeah. Well, a part of that is the timing coming out of COVID.
And I think still is a time to talk about the state of schools, where you're seeing
I agree
the
with
numbers continue getting worse. Where a couple months ago, that story came out, the school that LeBron is funding has 90% of the kids can't do basic math. Like
third grade level or something like that.
The situation of schools right now is horrific.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is something that speaks to every parent, and it's a very critical issue to them. I'm surprised more of, the message wasn't centered around, okay, law and order for sure, but also schools.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think also...
Well, we go back to the Ronna debate.
Yeah. Right? Republicans had to play defense on the issue of abortion in the state. I know from being a Virginia resident, every Democrat ad on TV
abortion all the time
said MAGA extremist or abortion. Yeah. MAGA extremist who is anti-abortion.
And what they said about abortion is that this person wants to ban abortion. They were lying about the Republican candidates' positions every single time. Every ad had the exact same catchphrase. It didn't matter what the candidate was or what they said about abortion. Democrats said this person wants to ban it. And they got away with the lie.
They did get away with it.
And they get away with the lie not just because it's a lie or we have this huge messaging problem on abortion. And I'm open to that debate that we need to be better at the message. It's also money, right? It's just straight up money.
Yeah.
You know, Daniel Cameron was outspent by what, $20 million of
Yep.
candidate money. You know, I mean,
It was
Democrats,
$5 million to $25 million.
yeah,
Oh,
the $25 million dollars, and it's like
I don't care what state you're in. If you're being outspent that badly, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah,
Right.
it makes a difference.
But it wasn't like, this is the thing that sort of bugs me about the sort of discourse in the scapegoating of election results in the Republican Party. And I mean, people have their reasons for blaming Ronna McDaniel for things. And like, look, I don't care what your opinion is of her, but like, you got to understand what the RNC actually does. Because like the Trump people want to blame Ronna because they don't want to blame Trump.
Yeah.
And the DeSantis people want to blame Ronna because, you know, Trump endorsed Ronna in the RNC.
Because she's
Right.
the reason she's there is Trump.
Right.
Right.
But like what the RNC does is they do the debates. They do the convention. They make transfers to state parties and help with ground game, and they get data to the campaigns through voter file targeting.
If
Right?
you
Like
want to
that's-
change that,
Right.
get on your elected official about repealing McCain-Feingold because this all ended in 2003.
Right, in 2003. Like now we have super PACs and campaigns raise all this money. Like those are the vehicles with which to have the message and the money behind advertising that swings elections. It's not Ronna. Like we didn't have a turnout problem in Virginia. Like if you look at what Youngkin and his team did to focus on early vote, for example, or the overall fact that like we're going to win the popular vote in Virginia, like we didn't have a turnout problem.
Yep.
Look at Kentucky. Yeah, Daniel Cameron lost by what, 5 points, 5.5
Yeah,
points?
and everybody else blew out.
One by 15. They all won
Yeah.
by 15. Republicans did in fact show up. We just had a problem where we outspent by $20 million.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Which
like
is kind of weird, by the way, having worked with everyone else on that ticket, like in a very personal way. Wasn't
Yeah.
that strange? The first election I've ever been a part of where everybody on a Republican ticket is somebody who I've literally like shared a desk with at some point.
Yeah.
It was a wild deal. And watching that, I think only solidified my view of what you're saying, that if you get outspent 25-5, as none of the other candidates did, they were all at parity or maybe a little behind, but they were all sort of in that.
Yeah, I think I looked and it was not more than like a 10% difference, let alone by a 500% factor.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, you can say, I think people like the people who are blaming like Trump, for example, on the Daniel Cameron thing, like they're not right for the typical reasons that you would say, like Donald Trump hurt him in the suburbs in the swing race, and that's why Daniel Cameron lost. And yes, I'm sure it hurt him in Fayette and it hurt him in Jefferson County, the Trump endorsement. And there are some moderate voters or independent voters who wouldn't have voted for him because of, you know, Donald Trump. But like ultimately what it comes down to, I think, in the Trump world, and particularly in the candidates that he endorses, is there's always this huge money disparity. And there's just so many of our primary voters, and I hope people who are listening to this realize this, is like, I understand you want to donate to Donald Trump or you want to donate to these other presidential candidates, but there's a heck of a lot of people that are going to be on a ballot for a gubernatorial race or a Senate race or a House race next cycle that like they need money too. Like they need small dollars online too. And if they don't get them, we're going to be in this position again in 2024.
And there might be no more efficient way to contribute to, right? I mean, if you think about trying to build a Republican Party from the ground up to ensure that all of these districts, no matter how small they are funded and can win elections, it seems to me like a top-down infrastructure is, I'm not opposed to people donating at the top of the food chain, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, like, take a look at your local races. If it matters to you, and I'm guessing it does. If you're listening to this, I'm guessing it does. You got to figure out how to make a cultural adoption as your neighbors to get involved in it because your Democratic neighbors have. It's not because, like, you got to figure out how to just give more of your money away. God knows none of us want to do that. That's not it. The problem is you can't complain about the results when every one of your liberal neighbors who believe something very, very different than you do has already adopted this mentality.
Liberal neighbors, again, and this brings us back full circle, liberal neighbors who only 14% of U.S. voters think Biden has made them better off. And they're still involved, and they still turn out, and they still donate.
Yeah,
like that's what we're ultimately up against.
And also, like you mentioned about the donating thing, like volunteer. Like, do you know how thrilled your city council candidate is going to be if you show up and say, I can make calls for a couple hours?
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, Thank you so much.
That's a really good point, Smug. And I'll finally say this because I think there's a lot of people that are sort of on the top that are in charge of stuff who are like, well, we didn't win because of, these assholes. And there's finger pointing.
It's always those assholes.
Yeah,
they're at it again.
Some asshole is the worst campaigner of all time. But if you take Virginia, for example, this was run by some of the most competent people I know who are incredibly good, who refused to play the expectation game. It just went for the win, came up a little bit short. The results, if you look deeply into them, they made incredible gains. That was not a waste. Like, whatever was done in 23 in Virginia sets the table for Virginia to be an actual competitive state, which it hasn't been for 15 years, other than that one Youngkin win.
That's a great point.
Right? And so, don't be discouraged by that. There are plenty of shysters out there. And, at some point, we're going to get the muzzle off and just start naming names because there's a lot of them out there. That was not one of them. It really wasn't. And I don't think that we have an excuse anymore of not just getting totally involved in all these things. Was it a little bit of abortion? Was it a little bit of that? Sure. But it's also a cultural adoption that we need to get at very, very local levels.
Well, last Tuesday wasn't the only down ballot election news that occurred during the week. You guys saw Joe Manchin announce that he is not running for re-election in the state of West Virginia, and that means that the state moves into the Republican category for the United States Senate. And that is huge because Jim Justice was already running. He's the governor of the state. He's already running against Joe Manchin. Manchin dropped out of the race against Jim Justice, and that means that Republicans only need, if West Virginia is in our category, we only need 2 more states in order to get a majority in the Senate.
Yeah, 1 hour after he dropped Cook Political, moved that West Virginia Senate race from toss-up to solidly Republican.
Solidly Republican. And I think there's a couple of reasons you got to thank at the top. Politico did a good story about this, but the recruitment effort that went in to try to get Governor Jim Justice in that race was really good. Hats off to Steve Daines and McConnell and others who had made that a priority, knowing that it wasn't just somebody who could win and do the job, but it was somebody who would put the fear of death into Joe Manchin and reiterate over and over again, you're going to lose this race. If it was an open primary and Jim Justice's name wasn't in that, let's not mistake this. He would be right where he's at, and he would probably have a better than even shot at winning re-election in a presidential year. He did it before. Well,
and this one might have been different, with what,
would have
been. Could have been. But what I know for sure is him dropping out has saved Republicans, $20 million?
A lot of money.
At least.
You know what I mean?
But you got to,
which is more money for Montana. It's more money for Ohio.
But you got to remember, if you're in West Virginia, or you can't forget why that's happening. It really is Governor Justice.
You're right.
It really is. I know there are other candidates in the race, but it would not have happened but for that man's decision to get into this race. This is a guy who owns the Greenbrier. He's the governor of West Virginia. If you've ever met him and seen his baby dog, this is not a man who lacks for comfort in the world. He could enjoy a wonderful life away from the dirty business of politics. He thought it was important for his country to turn the page on Joe Manchin's career, and that's why he got in. Do not forget that. Do not forget that. There's going to be a lot of people, now that it's an open primary and you're not worried about losing, that is coming for Jim Justice. Do not forget that, because but for that totally selfless act, we would be 20, 25, 30, $40 million in to try to get a must-take election back for Republicans.
Right. Every poll showed Justice with double-digit leads over Manchin. And everybody knows why Manchin's getting out of that race. And hopefully we get big man Justice on the program at some point soon. We've talked to his folks. They seem very interested.
Oh, that's great. I hope he brings that dog.
I want to reiterate, you make such a terrific point. This is Jim Justice is someone who's already been tremendously successful, extremely wealthy. They, so frequently, all of us Republicans are like, those damn Democrats, they have 51. They're right there.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know what? I'm going to do something about it.
I'm going to do something.
And he scared the shit out of a guy, a sitting senator, to bounce. That's wild.
It is. It's an amazing thing, and it's harder to make that decision than you can ever imagine if you're not put in that situation. So I thank him for it. But where does that leave us? You recall at the beginning of the cycle, Republicans needed basically to focus on 3 states. It was West Virginia, which now seems very, very comfortable, Ohio, and Montana. Now, we got a bunch of other states to talk about, but Ohio then now comes into focus because you had a Democratic incumbent of Sherrod Brown who has parted the seas of partisanship for way too long. Now, he's been a little lucky in opponents that he's drawn. He's lived a charmed political life.
Yeah, and he's run in very good cycles for Democrats. 06, 12, and 18 were all very good cycles for Democrats nationally.
Yeah. Think about that. I mean, these are all...
Yeah.
You're talking about Democrats winning Ohio 3 times in the last 20 years, and he just happened to be on the ballot all 3 times?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wild string of luck. But now you've got people who are putting these campaigns together, Frank LaRose, Dolan, Bernie Moreno, we've had on the program, who look like competent alternatives to that. Now, it's incumbent that they don't get too bogged down in this primary to a point where they're like, you know what I'm talking about.
We don't want that.
Like, they're going to have to continue to do what they've done up to this point to make a case not to disqualify themselves with the general electorate, because the only way that Sherrod Brown gets to where he wants to go is if they convince the general electorate in Ohio that this is a crazy person. And we've given them that reason in a lot of states. These 3 have not, but they got to focus on that.
Yeah. No, it's a winnable state. It's a state where President Trump won in 2020 by 8 points. You got to think he can do that again against Joe Biden, and he can carry one of these guys with him.
And you got J.D. Vance there, like making a delegation that's like young, energetic, the next generation, rolling their sleeves up, getting involved in this country. That's a strong message, especially when you're going to be running against Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. That's strong.
And just don't be, I mean, none of these guys are weird or crazy, but there's a tendency when you live campaign life on Twitter that weird and crazy enters your framework for decision making. And you can see it every once in a while. As long as they tune that out. If I had a candidate in Ohio right now, I would take away their phone. I would take away their phone. You're only allowed to talk to voters and communicate directly to voters. I don't want to see the weird, very online bro giving you thoughts about Social Security numbers and how to winnow down the federal workforce. I don't want you talking about that.
And so I'm going to get that candidate my phone number so I can text them my insane takes. They can't see on it.
I mean, it's rewarding for the insane online right to hear, no question. But they mistake that traction for a voter's point of view.
Right. They think it's actually reflective of broad sentiment in the electorate, and it simply is not.
It just simply is not. And then, so we go out a little further west with Montana. So far, cross your fingers, that has been an incredible demonstration project by the NRSC in recruiting a guy like Tim Sheehy, who's a first-time candidate, incredibly accomplished guy.
Navy SEAL, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, everything in his resume speaks to how sort of squared away this guy ultimately is. There's been a lot of talk about Rosendale, who ran in 2018 and lost, getting into this again. He was instrumental in the ouster of McCarthy. He was instrumental in McCarthy not getting the speakership the first time. He was instrumental in basically saying no to anything that would keep Republicans together and do things like cut spending. We've seen this movie before. And if Tim Sheehy's on that ballot, John Tester's going down. Not going to be easy, but he's going down. If that becomes a bloody, bloody primary, and if Rosendale's on that nomination stage, I don't know. I feel like I've seen the movie before.
Tester, you have. Tester, the reason he's a senator right now is because he beat Matt Rosendale 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know why anybody would just repeat the same mistake over again. Just try somebody else.
Yep. No, I agree. So then it leaves you with a bunch of states like Pennsylvania. You guys talked to McCormick. I mean, that guy is as good a candidate as we're going to have anywhere in the country. And he's also, I was talking to a good friend of his the other day who's a very accomplished political guy in his own right. And we were talking about how much more comfortable he seems running the second time. And that he's just, he learned a lot of lessons from the first time. And I think that campaign is executing. He's going to give Bob Casey hell in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, it's just no question about it.
Casey is another candidate like Sherrod Brown who has lived a charmed life in easy cycles for Democrats. He's another one of these 06, 12, 18 Democrats who just has not been on the ballot at a time where his standard bearer was so unpopular that everybody wants to vote them out of office. I mean, Joe Biden will be like a millstone around Bob Casey's neck, and he's got no way to separate himself from the guy.
And one other thing, just for our listeners, when we say that these candidates have lived a charmed life in those cycles, you got to remember 2006 was like
Democrat wave,
Iraq war, anxiety, right? Then you had 2012, Barack Obama re-election.
Yep.
Right. In 2018, really, really tough midterm.
Democratic wave.
Wave. So these are wave elections for Democrats. They're the only reason that they still survived.
Yeah.
And running bad candidates sometimes. And I hope we learned that lesson from 2022.
I think, I think the unique thing about McCormick in Pennsylvania is, number one, you can't find anyone to better articulate how the economy works and how they have a vision to help get America back on the tracks better than McCormick can. And also, when he was on our show, he brought up how much the state of Pennsylvania has suffered under this fentanyl epidemic. And that's something that Bob Casey's going to have to deal with. Why has this state done, like, it is horrific, the statistics coming out of Pennsylvania.
And nobody,
that's on Bob Casey hasn't done anything about it.
About anything. It's not just fentanyl. I would encourage, if you're a Bob Casey supporter, email the program and tell us one fucking thing that guy has accomplished in his time in the Senate. I have no idea. Like, he was on TV the other day. I was like, oh, man, I forgot what his voice sounded like.
I mean, I think that also might be by design. You know? He's like, well, I'm an idiot, so like I really don't want to be out there saying shit. It was like if someone's marking up the ballot, they're like, oh, Bob Casey sounds like a normal dude.
It's like, I remember his daddy. His daddy was a pro-life Democrat who had like culturally conservative views. It must be the same. Now, not this case. You should probably look into that. Because there's nothing conservative about this guy. A couple other things. We've got to figure out a nomination process, but it's an open seat in Michigan. Michigan is typically very close during presidential election years. Republicans have been stymied. It's not since Spence Abraham that we've actually elected a Republican senator from Michigan. So I'm not saying it's easy, but we got some candidates here that I think could maybe do the trick. They're going to have to not fall victim to the bad candidate thing, and you got to get some help. Wisconsin's kind of the same category, although you think that Tammy Baldwin has got some unique stuff that we could run against.
I think she's got a tremendous number of liabilities that have not been fully litigated in public. She is someone who's gotten away with everything as a Democrat in easy cycles, and if you get a good candidate, like there's some rumors that this guy named Eric Hovde, who is a self-funder, might announce at some point. If you get a good candidate to run against her who's capable of prosecuting the case against a senator who does not belong as their state's senator, who's voting with Joe Biden 90% of the time. You know, people in Wisconsin pride themselves on being their own thing. And I think Ron Johnson proves that over and over again. I think to some extent Russ Feingold proved that over and over again. Wisconsin wants someone who represents them, not what Joe Biden tells their person to vote for. I think they're going to pick somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that the last state I'll cover, I mean, there's two. Nevada, which is always close, and it's actually trending in the presidential polling a little better than it has in recent years in terms of, like, they really don't like Joe Biden one bit. And Senator Rosen there has zero in terms of established identity. I mean, Masto, Catherine Cortez Masto, who ran against Adam Laxalt last time, at very least, had an established base. This lady does not. And we'll see what happens at a primary. Sam Brown, second-time candidate there. Looks like they're putting some things together. That could be interesting. Mm-hmm. And depending upon what happens on the top of the ticket, that's something to watch. And then Arizona, which is the weirdest of them all, and it has been for 6 years. Republicans cannot get out of their own way. Whatever the electorate is screaming in the ear of Republican primary voters, they're doing the exact opposite of in terms of what they're communicating. But they now have the potential of a three-way race with Sinema as an independent, Ruben Gallego running off the left-hand side of the map, and Kerry Lake essentially clearing a Republican primary. 3 ways, 34 gets you to victory. Okay. Like, that's worth the discussion. We're going to monitor that one. I don't want to get super hyped up about it because I've just seen the rug pulled out too many times. You know, it's anytime, it feels like the early 2000s in New Jersey, where every single time you're like, well, this person's actually a convicted felon, and how can they possibly win? Our Republican candidate looks like they're pulling, oh, we lost by 10. Like, that's what it feels like in Arizona, since 2016. And I just need to see more. I need to see more. If they're committed to running on kitchen table issues and actually listening to the electorate there, I think we can win that. But anyway, that's the roundup. Somewhere in there, as you can see, is a Republican majority, and we're a lot closer than we were 2 weeks ago.
That's for sure.
No question about it. All right, so 2 quick items. San Francisco. President Xi is coming here. The Chinese guy's coming here, and amazing.
You can't even call him like he's essentially a dictator at this point. He's pushed out all competition. He's like, I'm allowed to be reelected infinite number of times.
And amazingly enough, we have figured out a way. He has done more than Democratic leadership has done over the last 40 years in San Francisco. They've managed to clean up San Francisco, awaiting his visit.
Well, when you roll out the red carpet, you have to make sure the poop isn't on the street. Because that carpet's not going to lay flat with poop underneath it.
You wouldn't want President Xi to have a hypodermic needle in the back of his foot.
No.
So but this is just an amazing admission to me.
I mean, well, Gavin doesn't want to look bad in front of his boss. He went and kissed the ring the other week. He doesn't want Xi to be like, okay, let's see how things are going in your neck of the woods. Are you running things good? And he shows up and he sees San Francisco for what it is. So,
did you guys see what Gavin Newsom said at the press conference?
No.
Let me quote him. Because I'm sure we don't have the video loaded up in here. I should have sent it.
Wait, we might have some video. Hold on.
Well, we have Gavin Newsom? Oh, yeah, okay.
I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
Even the people, for folks on YouTube, even the people behind him are laughing.
No, it's true. Because it's true. That's amazing. Think that was in the top line talkers the press secretary put together?
I love that. It's a straight up admission. Like, I'm okay with Californians living in shit, but not when we have actual leaders rolling up.
They can't see this.
I can't do that.
They can't see this.
I'm not embarrassed for the people who elected me. I'm just embarrassed for the foreign dictators coming and seeing this.
They can't see it like this.
Like he's going to see, he's going to go through the streets of San Francisco. He's not going to see, the poor drug addicts and the fentanyl and the poop in the streets. Is going to be like, I need to start sending more fentanyl over here.
Yeah, that's going to be the message. He's like, I guess we got to up production.
I haven't destroyed America enough.
Doesn't it remind you of and this is going to sound terrible, my wife's probably going to kill me, but then again, she doesn't listen, so I'll go for it anyway. But does it remind you of what your house looks like on the reg? And like you come home and you've just sort of learned to live with what it looks like with kids and their stuff and whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, your in-laws come into town.
Yeah.
And, like, all of a sudden you could fully just eat a 5-course dinner off the floor. It's just sparkling. Every toy. It's like, oh, I didn't know we had places for these toys, but they're all away somewhere. And, like, you're like, wow, I didn't know that was actually in the realm of possibilities to do. But it's only under a specific circumstance.
Yeah, the throw blanket has to be folded the right way. There's far too many pillows on the chairs for no reason. You can't sit in the thing, but it looks nicer that way.
Yes.
So when company is over, you have the pillows there that get in the way that you have to move when you put your butt down, which is not really practical. But
when did that become a thing? Whatever the pillow industry did to women of a certain age is really like worth studying at a political science level, because it's not just that you can't sit on your couch or your chairs because there's all these pillows, like your bed.
Yeah.
There's like 17 decorative bed pillows. Like, what? If you're not gonna lay on the pillow, what's a pillow there for?
Right.
I've never figured this out, but there is not. If you so much as bring this up in the context of a wife or a girlfriend,
that's a fight.
You're going to fight.
Yeah.
You're going to fight. It's like, they cut to the deceased thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is the day that this man died.
And I know you're shining down on me from heaven.
Or the African funeral guy.
Yeah.
We haven't seen enough of that
Yeah,
lately.
I mean, but it's incredible, and what just an embarrassment
It
to
is.
this country that these people have the capacity of doing this in every single city. Just remember that. Democratic leaders who run all of these urban areas have the capacity of cleaning them up, making them family friendly, bringing commerce back in, showcasing them to the families who live around, providing safety and security, and they choose not to.
They choose not to.
They choose not to. I think that's the perfect segue to. Have you cut this thing out? Did you cut this out? My chicken?
No.
No, it's back in. My chicken.
My God.
So there's an interesting story about this chicken.
Oh my God, we're doing this?
Well, I mean, people want some animal news.
I don't know about the chicken.
Well, according to the Smithsonian magazine, so it's reputable.
I don't trust them. They're a government psyop. We've had to talk about this. I don't trust the Smithsonian.
The Smithsonian is
Yeah.
a government
Of course they
psyop.
are. They want your kids to go there and listen to what they have to say.
Learn about the right flyer.
What are they? You can call them chickens, but in some culture, what do they call them?
Roosters.
Or if you fight them?
Hens.
I don't know.
I'm not playing along.
Anyway, the title is Why This Rare Black Chicken Can Sell for as Much as $6,000. For those of us who've been to the grocery store, chicken has become much more expensive.
I mean, honestly, that's not far-fetched.
What a great story idea.
I mean, I think that's like the going rate for Tyson's.
The Ayam Samani. You think that's correct, Michael?
I think that was very good.
Yeah, seems right.
It's an inky black chicken breed indigenous to Indonesia that it's known by many names, amongst others, the world's most bewitching chicken, the Lamborghini of poultry, the goth chicken, Sith Lord bird. There's a reason this chicken commands such attention. As Jason Beadle writes for National Geographic, see another reputable publication is talking about.
I don't trust them either.
The Samani is perhaps the most deeply pigmented creature found in nature. Every aspect of its appearance, from its feathers to its beak to its tongue to its claws, is jet black.
So this is a Lamborghini of poultry because it's the best fighter? Is that this is a fighting machine?
I don't know how
this has been bred for violence.
This is a fighting machine.
I don't know if it fights or not. I'm going to read more and you can draw some conclusions.
This is the Hulk Hogan of chickens.
Perhaps.
Roosters.
It's hailing from Indonesia. The Ayam Samani is often hailed, as we said, as the Lamborghini of poultry due to its strikingly dark appearance. These chickens possess entirely black feathers, even down to their bones.
That's I've heard about this.
I mean, so anyway, apparently these are hard to find, but in the United States, where there's fear of avian flu, it led to a ban on these imports directly from Indonesia. But they're now going for a rate of $2,000.
Wow.
For these chickens, and they can go for much more than that. Somebody who plunks down $1,500 for a Williams-Sonoma chicken coop wants an artisanal chicken breed. This guy's explaining.
Well,
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've seen this, now I remember, a YouTube channel on barbecuing that I watch has actually cooked one of these up, and the drumsticks and everything are like pitch black.
Yeah.
And he was like, the thing is that it doesn't matter how good the prep or anything is, psychologically, it's weird. Like, you don't, you're like, is this burnt to a crisp? It's not appetizing.
Well, that's
it's not like you're golden brown.
That's the thing, dude, is like when you cook this, how do you know when it's actually done?
Well,
you just got to go by thermometer. You got it, right?
The dude who I watched sous vide the thing because he was like, there's the only way I can be sure.
Well, so it says that hardly any people actually eat them. But listen to this quote. Most people are interested only in their magical blood.
Oh, interesting.
What?
Wow.
Leaves us hanging there. What the hell are they talking about?
If the blood is black, now that is something.
I think it is. So, but I mean, you see a picture of this thing. I can kind of see.
We should crowdfund this thing and slaughter it and see the results.
Wait.
They're like, this magical blood. That's the wildest ending to an article.
Look at it. It's the world's most expensive chicken. Right there.
Horrific.
Does it even taste better than other chicken?
No, I bet it'd be off-putting,
Bet it'd be the exact same.
But why would you eat it if you can take it to Peru or you can take it to Bogota, wherever they're fighting these things, and you basically...
Wait, I don't know nobody said anything about fighting them.
You know what I would do, man? I would set up these matches globally, and I would make the octagon black. So the other chicken's just completely screwed.
Yeah, somebody
just come in with some hard music.
Somebody brings a regular old rooster.
Yeah.
And he sets the thing down, and you're like, oh.
And the octagon
buddy.
is black, so this thing's like Predator.
Yeah,
right?
Predator.
Like you cannot see it move.
Can't see it.
And then you have just some banging entrance music, like with laser lights.
That's the only time they'll see it.
And I love that we've reduced this to like, this would be the best cockfighter
Yeah.
right here.
Unbelievable.
It's good. It's expensive, so you better make sure it wins. You don't want that thing getting hoisted by some regular old rooster. Some foghorn leghorn comes, takes the blades to him. That would suck. But anyway, we just thought you should know that because, these are important things.
No, 100%.
With all of that, I think we ought to go to our interview today. And I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great. Nikki Haley.
This episode is fueled by the American Petroleum Institute. No matter your politics, no matter the debate, one thing is certain. America runs on affordable, reliable energy. America's policies must recognize that Americans benefit from making, moving, and improving the energy right here in America. Today, America's oil and natural gas industry supports nearly 11 million jobs and provides American energy to keep this nation strong. Learn how at api.org.
I want to welcome a very special guest. We're just so honored to have her in studio as a part of her swing to the greater DMV. She's the former UN ambassador, former governor of the great state of South Carolina, and now a serious contender for the nomination to be president of the United States. Nikki Haley, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I told you I would be a serious contender.
You did. Right off the jump, you did. You know what's funny about that? So the first time you came in here and it was a conference room table, which, I mean...
Yeah, you guys have really stepped it up. It must have been the time that I came.
It was.
And then
that was it.
All the success is because of you.
That's exactly right. But I think our takeaway right from the beginning, and we didn't know each other well, but we knew people in all of our extended worlds, and our takeaway was from a public persona. Something felt very different about your launch of this campaign. It felt super authentic, and not that your public persona was inauthentic in any way, but it felt like this is a woman who's very confident in running what she's going to run on. She knows exactly who she is, and she's going to let the chips fall where they may. She's not going to try to sort of retrofit her personality, her background, her experience into somebody else's electorate. You're just going to be you, and if it doesn't work out, great. And we all kind of looked at each other after that interview, and we're like, well, this feels different. This feels like everybody's got their opinions about everybody in this field. But one of the things that you're just shattering the misconception from the jump was that you were going to try to put together a cookie cutter campaign, and it just never was that. And it feels like you're kind of reaping the rewards of that because you've continued it all the way through.
I trust the American people. I think at the end of the day, they can tell if you're genuine or if you're not. And so I think the best way to do it is you put your truth out there and let the chips fall where they may. That doesn't always work. But you have to be true to yourself, because what's worse is if they see you're trying to fake it.
Yeah.
And I don't do that well. I've never done that well. I don't want to start now. And I just think it's better. I think people want the truth, even if they don't agree with you.
Yeah.
They want to trust you and know that you're going to tell them the truth. And, I've noticed that when I was governor, I saw that when I was ambassador. I mean, you're dealing with all these tyrants on the world stage. Mm-hmm. But they trusted me because they knew I was going to tell them what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I was going to be honest with them. And I think the American people are the same way. I think it's, you throw it out there, you say, this is the challenge, these are the challenges I see, these are the solutions. And I think the American people are going to get it right. I really do. I have faith in that.
Well, I mean, look, your calculation for what it was worth was perfectly right, because when you started, everybody's like, look, we love Nikki Haley. Everybody loves Nikki Haley. Her resume is great. She did a great job as UN ambassador. Probably not her time. We'll see what she has to say. And they were treating you as like, it's another formidable candidate, but it's not really a serious thing because you got Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump and everything else. And then you fast forward 4 months, you hit a debate stage, and immediately everything starts changing. People start evaluating candidates based on, 1, their authenticity, 2, their command of the issues, how they interact with one another. And it felt to me, I don't know if it felt like to you, but it felt like that Milwaukee debate was like a Evel Knievel ramp for the Nikki Haley campaign.
You're forgetting one key component of that debate was putting Vivek Ramaswamy in a locker.
And twisting the combination.
It's like spoke to me on a personal level that I appreciate so much.
I mean, look. First of all, he is quite the fan of himself, in case you haven't noticed.
Oh, I've noticed.
But the way I looked at it is if you're going to do a race, and if you're going to do a campaign, do it right or don't do it. And I've always been like that in everything. And so, the first thing is we wanted to get a good launch off. That happened in Charleston. We had thousands of people. I knew South Carolina would have my back if we, ran a good campaign. Second is we wanted to build relationships in Iowa and New Hampshire. We've done over 100 town halls now, answering every question, shaking every hand. I'm the last person to leave. It was building relationships and trust with them. And then we wanted to show we had financial strength. I didn't have all the millions that the rest of the guys brought to the table, but I knew how to spend it. And I knew that you don't waste it. You make sure every dollar goes to TV where the masses can see you. So, yes, we've been flying commercial, and yes, we stay in a lot of garden inns and residence inns, but the dollars are going to the voters, and that's where I wanted it to go. And then it was the debate stage. Yeah. And I knew on the debate stage that if we could get the masses to hear me, just on what I thought the problems were, what I thought the solutions were, that would be the gut check I needed to see if we were going forward. And the surprising thing was, they throw it to the girl to answer the question about abortion. And I threw my truth out there to let the chips fall where they may. And within 24 hours, 1,500 women signed on to our campaign.
Is that right?
Like, it went like wildfire. And I thought, this isn't going to be good. I don't know about Iowa, how they're going to take it but everybody took to it. And so in our town halls, we've got suburban women, we've got independents, we've got conservative Democrat women, we got college girls in airports will stop me now, all because of that. And what that tells me is what I always knew was true. People don't want to be judged. Like, that's not a place of a leader to judge people. What you're supposed to do as a leader is communicate and try and find ways to bring out the best in people to go forward. And so you look at the abortion situation, you see what happened last week and the losses that we have. And Republicans have to realize, one, this is a story of addition. We need more people with us than pushing people away. Two, it's not just what you think, it's how you say it. Like, say it in a way that's respectful. You don't have to be hateful about it. And then just be honest.
Yeah,
and I think it works.
Clearly wasn't 6 times poll tested and focus groups. It's just kind of what you think.
My staff didn't even know what I was going to say. You want to talk about nervous. They were
the most nervous people.
Yeah, but I think they also knew kind of where I was on it. And I always thought, this is too personal of an issue for every woman and every man. Like, don't demonize this issue anymore. Women don't want to be divided over this. America doesn't want to be divided over this. So treat it with the respect it deserves. And it does go back to the fact that I had a roommate in college that was raped. And I would never want anyone to go through that wondering if she was pregnant. So I just think we have to be respectful. Everybody's got a story. Be respectful of their story. And, I don't want people to judge me for being pro-life.
Right.
And why would I judge them for being pro-choice if I don't want them judging me for being pro-life? So it's just, treating people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah, a whole bunch of issues out there. And one of the things I think Smug brought up in our post-debate wrap and why he thought that you won this last debate was because of the central nature that foreign policy has sort of become here since October 7. And it's sort of a dividing line in presidential politics where you either know what you're doing or you don't. Like, you can make it up, but when you're making it up, you can see through it pretty quickly. And it was instinctive, like you knew what you were doing. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what you were saying.
Yeah, so, I think you definitely had a strong showing in Milwaukee, but I feel like when the American voter is on a daily basis inundated with stories about how Biden is mishandling an incredibly important situation, and it's like a lot of baggage has been building with it. It's the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, the way that the world no longer sees America as a strong nation, no longer, dictators are emboldened around the world when Joe Biden is in the White House. And I think following the terrorist attacks on October 7th, you match up incredibly well against him? Because I know on the world stage, you made it clear at the UN, a lot of those bad actors don't want to be dealing with you on the other side of the table.
Well, I mean, look, I'm tough, but I do think it's important that they know what America expects of them and we stop being reactionary. That's the problem I see with what Biden's doing is, how in the world do we have 100 strikes on our military men and women on bases and you're just going to go do a little back and forth after 40 of them? Like you should have done it after the first one. I mean, we have brain injuries of our soldiers. This is my husband's deployed. I mean, the thought that they're not protected is unthinkable, but that's what's happening. And what's interesting is in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and across the country, they were talking about inflation. They were talking about the border. They were talking about the lack of transparency in the classroom, and they were talking about China. But once October 7th hit, it really went to a level that I haven't seen because I think it was the horror of it, but I also think it's the division of what's happening in our country.
Which has come as a surprise to a lot of people. And, look, I knew it was there, but it shocked me too. I mean, I didn't know the level of latent anti-Semitism that was surrounding so much of the base of the Democratic Party that has come to the fore at this point. I'm guessing because you've dealt with all of this, I mean, you knew not only did we have some of that, but the world is in.
But you know what no one's talking about is, first of all, the anti-Semitism was there. It was always bubbling up. It was always a concern. This just brought it to a whole new level. But what no one is talking about that is, to me, a huge issue that I'll deal with as soon as I get there is social media. So when you look at social media's role in the division of our country, the first thing I'm going to do is go to those social media companies and say, you have to show us your algorithms. I want the country to see the algorithms so that you can see how these companies move. The second thing is they need to verify every single person on their outlet and I want it by name. Because
what about Smug? Does he qualify?
I've provided them with my government.
If Smug is on your driver's license, then, and look, you can put Smug in parentheses, but I want everybody's name because guess what that does? It gets rid of the Iranian bots, the Russian bots, the Chinese bots, and the North Korean bots. When you look at the misinformation that is causing Americans to do this, who's it coming from? The Iranians and the Russians right now. TikTok, it's the Chinese. Look at the videos out on TikTok that China's doing to make people sympathetic to the Palestinians. Look at what social media is doing. This is a national security threat. They are giving the narrative to the American people. So you've got college kids everywhere on campuses thinking that they are fighting the occupation of Gaza. There are no Israelis in Gaza. There are no Jewish people in Gaza. There is only Hamas in Gaza. But if you look at social media, you'd never know that.
You would never know that. But I'm glad you brought this up because one thing I wanted to reiterate. You were rudely interrupted in the debate when they were asked specifically about TikTok. And you had a moment. You
Don't
engaged.
mess with my children. Don't mess. You can bring it to me all day long, but don't mess with my children. I mean, that was, and the worst part is, this is kind of the hard part is my husband's deployed. This is the first time I've gone through debates without him. He was always there. He was always in eyesight, and I always looked for him. And my daughter, who's 25, has stepped up to fill that role because my son's in college.
Wow. Yeah.
So she stepped up to fill the role. So she was in the front row.
Holy smokes.
She's my only person. And when he did that, and he had already gone after her before for TikTok. And the story behind that is she hasn't been on TikTok for years. But she got married last year. And during her bachelorette party, one of her friends put something out there. And she, I guess, you not retweeted it, but whatever you do. It was the one time she did it. But that doesn't even matter. She's 25. She's an adult. I can't.
Well, I mean, there's like tens of millions of it. It's not up to them to set policy on.
But she's sitting in the front row. And when he calls her out like that, I was so.
We saw Mom come out.
Well, and she was giving me like the biggest grin, like, don't do it, Mom. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like she knew what was coming. But, come on. But the issue with Vivek is that, first of all, yes, it was personal, But he and I have major policy differences.
Totally.
You know, people keep saying, oh, they've got a thing. Yeah, it's called policy differences. We disagree on so much. Like, he thinks Israel can handle this on their own and we don't need to be there. He thinks you should give Ukraine to Russia and deal with it. He thinks we need to be friends with China because, like, we are so polar opposite that, you know, that there's no way we're ever going to.
He managed to make the question about abortion about men's rights. I noticed as well. It's just like on every single thing, he finds a way to be like, how online can I possibly be?
But, you know, it's the Trump talking points. That's what he's doing. He's the Trump spoil in all of this. He knows what they want out there, so he's playing that Trump game.
I spoke with another candidate who was on the stage with you that was making their case for how they had done a great job. And one of the things they said was, Nikki's got the best thing going right now because she's turned Vivek into her human punching bag. And there's no way around it. Every time she engages him, the rest of it doesn't matter what you're doing. And I found this watching the debate. You stop and you're like, hold on, wait a minute. And then you pay attention
the
to
crowd
it.
gets quieter.
Because what's going to happen next is since Milwaukee, that's like a moment.
It's not what I want.
I'm sure.
Like, it's never. I don't go in there like, you know, he goes in there with these planned comments and speak. You know, the 3-inch heels. Like, he had all that. I don't go in practice like that. You know, I go in and it's a lot of gut and instinct, and you go where. And so I actually was like, you know what? I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to engage him because we are not going to let this debate be about him. But what happens? He comes out of the gate. He hits the female chair of the party. He hits the female anchor on the platform, and then he hits me. And I'm not saying anything.
I ain't saying, I'm just saying.
But he might have a girl problem. I'm just saying he might have a girl problem. And so, you know, when he did that, I'm like, is it going to be this kind of debate? And I really, if you notice, he said some things and I let it go. But there's just something about him.
Yeah.
That, like, you can't let it go because it's like, it's so against the values of America. It's so against, I believe in freedom and I believe in people's rights and all of those things, but he takes it to a level that's not trustful.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I've said it before, I don't trust him.
Right.
Well, perhaps his background would eliminate a lot of experience in dealing with
But I mean, that's a good point. He also has an experience problem. And you know, you mentioned that you have a policy difference with him. You also have a very, very big experience difference with him. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, you know, right before Margaret Thatcher became prime minister in England, the country was in a very, very bad place. The economy was on the ropes. Foreign superpowers were sort of on the rise. And people wanted strong leadership. And they wanted someone who was experienced. And, you know, their system of government is a little different than ours. They don't have they didn't directly elect the prime minister. However, the parties wanted someone who actually had a record. And you have a record that you're running on at the UN. You actually were taking on the bureaucracy. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you took on the Chinese representatives and the Russian representatives at the UN. I know there's a great story about John Kerry's sister. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience at the UN.
You know, the UN is not for the faint at heart. It's really not. It's a tough place. And so every day, you know, you've got to fight. You don't know which country it's going to be. But I went in there knowing I just was going to be honest with them and tell them exactly where we were. But every day, China, Russia, Iran, Israel, the Palestinians, like, I dealt with them every single day at the UN. And the thing is, like, I kept the Russians closer to know what they were doing. I had a team at the UN that I put together that I wanted them to watch the Chinese every step they made, whether it was language putting in a resolution, whether it was someone trying to get the head of an agency. I really watched them very closely so that we could always be one step ahead. It was really important that we did that. But American strength isn't happening when you're just nice. American strength happens when they know you have friends. Mm-hmm. And that's the part I see America getting away from. Mm-hmm. They knew that NATO, there's nothing that upsets Putin more than NATO. Seeing everybody come together, seeing the fact that they could do that. There's a reason Russia's never invaded a NATO country. They've invaded Georgia, they've invaded Ukraine, they've invaded Moldova. They've never invaded a NATO country because they know what that alliance can do. And China, I saw China every day literally becoming more and more aggressive with other countries by putting projects in their countries and then waiting for a time like this when they can't pay it, and then them saying, okay, you can't pay it, give us your port, give us your utility, give us your military installation. That's how China moves. And so it was always just being very alert and strong on what they were doing. But I remember there was a resolution that we were working on, and it was after the chemical strikes that Assad did in Syria, where we saw so many children die. And we were trying to go and condemn Syria and what they were doing. And I had a meeting at the White House. I would only come for National Security Council meetings, and I'd head back over. And they were negotiating, and they were about to push a resolution through. And I flew back to New York, and then my team was like stalling and keeping it. And as soon as I walked in, the Russian was like, no, you can't come in here. We've been working on this. And I said, I'm here now. And guess what? It's all changing. And they knew. And we changed it and we gutted it. And they didn't get through with what they're doing. We always stood for America. Always. And they knew I was never going to give them a pass. And, you talk about, John Kerry, that goes to the bureaucracy of the State Department and every agency we have in D.C. Yeah. There is a deep state. That's not something that's over-exaggerated. When I gave my first speech at the UN, it was in support of Ukraine, and it was against Russia for their invasion of Crimea. And I remember right before I was getting ready to give the speech, you send it to the NSC so they know what you're going to say. The State Department called right away and said, you cannot give that speech. And I said, why? I said, is there something wrong in it? And they said, well, you can't talk like that. And I said, look, you can change anything if it's not factual, but that is how I talk. Right. And that's what we're going to say. And then they just saw that I kept doing it over and over. And I just didn't. They were trying to pretty it up. They were trying to be nice. Yeah. It wasn't a time to be nice. You had to be honest. You had to be straightforward. And so getting to the Kerry thing, my first week at the UN, you're drinking from a fire hydrant, and someone gets on the phone with a group of reporters and tells them what my agenda is. And it wasn't anything on my agenda. And I said, go find out who this is and fire them. They came back. It was John Kerry's sister.
I mean, unbelievable.
She worked at the U.S. mission of the United Nations. And I said, you got to get rid of her. And they said, we can't. She's here for 6 more months. And I said, take her key pass, take her computer. I will pay her to sit at home for 6 months. And she never walked back in the doors again. And it set the tone for everybody else in that mission to know we are not puppets for the State Department. We have a job to do. That job is in this building. And you stay focused. And everybody did that. The Foreign Service officers and those there, no one tried that again.
What a perfect story to illustrate how you ran that place. I love it. So can we talk brass politics for a minute?
Sure.
So, obviously, someone you know well has exited the stage. And Senator Tim Scott, who announced his intentions and ran a campaign throughout the summer, and I think initially was seen as a very formidable challenger not only to you, but the rest of the ticket, and sort of getting Republicans in the not Trump category to a consolidation place. Clearly that didn't happen for Tim. But I think in comparison to where we were in like 2016, the last time we ran a full wide open primary, to where we are here in 2023, consolidation seems to be happening much quicker. Part of that is rules, debate stage, who can actually qualify for the debates. Part of it is, I think, an endemic understanding from people like Senator Scott, like Mike Pence and others, saying we actually do want a choice here. And if I'm not it, I'm going to get out. What do you think the Tim Scott exit does for your candidacy? What do you think this goes sort of in the pre-primary window here in terms of what the Iowa caucus results ultimately look like?
I think, first of all, Tim Scott's a good, faithful guy. I knew that when I appointed him to the Senate. I knew that he would be someone who was going to make South Carolina proud, that he would never disappoint us, and he never has. And I think he ran a good race, and I think the race was better because he was in it. Now that he's stepped away, of course it shifts it again, the same way it shifted when, the vice president got out, when everybody else gets out, and it shifts it with every debate. So we started with 12. First debate we had 8. Then it went to 7. This past debate it was 5. It's hard to recover if you don't make the debate stage. Mm-hmm. We've got another debate in a month. I can't believe I got to go through that again. in Tuscaloosa, and what you're going to see is, my guess, there's going to be 3 people on that stage. Yeah. And so, you're looking at 3 to 4 going into Iowa, a couple drop off, then you have a couple going into New Hampshire, another one drops off.
And I assume you see that as a good thing. I mean, ultimately, you're talking about a consolidation.
It's historical. That's what happens. I mean, people drop before Iowa, people drop between Iowa and New Hampshire, and people drop from New Hampshire to South Carolina. And so we are going in for a head-to-head with Trump when we hit South Carolina. And,
and that's the goal.
And that's my home state, and that's where I think we're going to do it. But we're doing it by really touching every hand in Iowa, touching every hand in New Hampshire, making sure that we are front and center with South Carolinians, and we're going to earn it. And I think that's what people want. And people of Iowa and New Hampshire are smart. Like, they go see people multiple times. Yeah. And I think the reason they go see them is because they want to see who's genuine. I think they do want to see who's right on the issues. I think they want to ask different questions as the election goes along.
Yeah, when they get the same Nikki in July that they get in November, they're like, okay, well, that's something.
Well, and I think they know that look, it's sometimes hard truths have to be said, and you got to throw it out there. And I think people want that. I think that's important.
So, obviously, Donald Trump wasn't on that stage, and I don't anticipate he'll be in the one in Alabama. And he's got, 40% of the electorate in Iowa, if the polls are to be believed, and likely caucus goers. I would say, if you listen to the message from DeSantis' camp, it's Nikki's running a good race. Yeah, she's going up in the polls, but she doesn't chip away at Donald Trump's hold on the MAGA base. And they would say, well, she can never get to 50+1, because if you can't chip away at the MAGA base, you can't get more than half the party. Only Ron DeSantis does that because he has crossover appeal into the MAGA base. Why are they wrong?
What's he supposed to say? I mean, he's falling in the polls. And so he's going to go out there and say whatever he can. Is that why he threw all his eggs in the Iowa basket? Is that why he's not doing TV in New Hampshire or South Carolina? Let's see this for what it is. He's doing this. His team is saying, I'm the spoiler. But how am I the spoiler when we're bringing in suburban women, and we're bringing in independents, and we're bringing in people to vote that have never voted before? How am I the spoiler when we have Trump supporters who are saying, we love Trump, we support him, but we can't lose in November. We don't want to see Kamala Harris become president. Right. We're getting those, because at the end of the day, if you look at that poll that came out that Trump's bragging about, he's up 3 to 4 points in the swing states.
You're up 10.
10 to 13 points in the swing state, the exact same poll. So what I'm saying is, look at what happened last week, and think about the fact that this isn't just about winning president. If I can beat Biden by 10 to 13 points, guess what else we win? The governor's races, the House races, the Senate races, up and down the ticket. That's what this is about. And we can't survive a President Kamala Harris, so we better get this right. And I've told everybody, don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't play in this primary.
It's a good message.
Well, what they'll say, though, what the DeSantis people will say, in addition to that, is, Donald Trump has trained his fire on Ron DeSantis. He spent $20 million, $25 million or whatever through the super PAC or whatever. Do you anticipate that Trump's campaign is going to start to attack you now that you've risen in the polls?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a double-edged sword.
What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, politics is a blood sport. Of course he is. I think that's why there was a bird cage outside my hotel room when, a few weeks ago. He's going to do it. But I also think he knows, he's watching these debates. He worked with me for years. He knows exactly how I am, which is, I know my stuff. I'm tough. I'm going to call it like I see it. And I know him well. I know him well. And I'm not afraid to put that out there. And so I think if he knows if he's going to throw a punch, it's got to mean something.
You want him on that debate stage.
I want him on that debate stage. And the reason I want him on that debate stage is because the American people deserve it. They deserve to be able to hear it back and forth. If he was such a good president, get on the stage and say it. If you have no regrets and think you're fine, get on the stage and say it. And I get he's saying, I'm winning by so much, why would I get on? That's fine if he wants to do that. But at some point, you're going to offend Iowans and Granite Staters and South Carolinians who are saying, wait a minute, you want us to vote for you and you're not going to get on the stage? Because there's going to be a debate in Iowa. There's going to be a debate in New Hampshire. There's going to be a debate in South Carolina. Are you not going to show up to the debate in that state and do a rally instead? That's not going to look good. That's not going to be, voters are smart. They want to see you go head to head. And not only that, are you scared? Like, come on.
Nikki's just always playing offense. I mean, this campaign, you've run a hell of a one, but it seems to me like just picking up momentum a little bit at a time. I mean, look, you're in town. 6 months ago, you came here, everybody would be like, I love you, but I'm afraid of committing to anything. And now you've got droves of people coming to rooms all over this country to support you. That says something too, the fact that you're raising all this money and doing all this stuff.
But we're keeping our head down. We're staying disciplined. I mean, and we're focused on what matters. Like, I don't let that stuff, we appreciate it. We want that. But at the end of the day, you don't stop. We have a country to save. Yeah. And we'll do whatever it takes to do that because I don't want my kids to grow up like this. I don't want my family to live like this. Look at how distracted we are. And that's the thing, you know, when you talk about Trump, I actually think he was the right president at the right time. I agreed with a lot of his policies. You know, there's a reason I called him when I decided to run. One, because it was the right thing to do. He gave me the job. But two, I wanted him to know I was in it to win it. But you look at it now, and whether it's fair or not, chaos follows him. It follows him. So it doesn't matter what he does. It's just chaos with him. And the American people can't afford that because if we are distracted, the world is less safe. Our enemies are watching. And we can't have a country that's in chaos when we have to actually protect ourselves at this point.
If our listeners want to help out, where do they go?
Go to NikkiHaley.com. Tell 10 people to join us. We're going to do this. We're going to do this because America has an amazing ability to self-correct. And the self-correction is not about a person or a former president or the candidates on the stage. A self-correction is stopping the division that is happening in our country. Because America's got to get this right. We don't have the option of a President Kamala Harris. We just don't, because we won't survive that.
I noticed that you just skip right over the Joe Biden.
Because he's not there. He's not there.
We've noticed it, but it is something else coming from you. Yeah. It is. It's interesting. I love that. Listen, thank you for your time. We're going to let you, you're the busiest politician in the business. You're going from here to 8 different places.
I mean, you guys too, you were at the debate, like y'all, and now y'all are getting pretty flashy. Like, what's going on? I mean, it's like Smug's like walking with new kind of swagger about himself.
I got a neon sign.
I know, I can tell. It's like totally, it's ginning him up.
I mean, it took me like 2 days to recover from it, and you just kind of like on to the next. But anyway, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for coming on the program. Thank you for your team being so honest and open with us when we're asking questions about things. So we'll look forward to next time.
Go to NikkiHaley.com. Join the movement.
Thanks.
This episode is fueled by the American Petroleum Institute. No matter your politics, no matter the debate, one thing is certain. America runs on affordable, reliable energy. America's policies must recognize that Americans benefit from making, moving, and improving the energy right here in America. Today, America's oil and natural gas industry supports nearly 11 million jobs and provides American energy to keep this nation strong. Learn how at api.org.
Man, she is so good, and we are very lucky to have her. She's obviously making waves. We talked about the $10 million she laid down in these early states, and she is in it to win it.
Toughest interview to get, and I highly appreciate a presidential candidate from South Carolina who says, oh, your listeners would like to hear what I have to say? I'll show up immediately. That counts for a lot.
I mean, they've been running a bang-up campaign. I mean, I honestly, I don't care what anybody says about all the various campaigns. Look, a lot of people are getting into different categories where you're siloing each other off. You're listening to this show because we kind of give you the full read. But the one undeniable part of this is that they are running a terrific campaign in that. And look, she's doing a great job. So, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. Thank you so much to Governor Haley. Thank you so much to our listeners. Again, reminder, if you have not yet, check us out on YouTube where you can see the show as well as hear the show. So, until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.